she was killed. And they tried
the top
to
six
cover it
girls
up.
really look great, but you seem to have that perfect aesthetic
I wasn't
look.
into hip hop or even soul music.
There are definitely people that need a little Viagra.
Old School Bodybuilding Clothing Company. If it's been 3.5 hours since you last ate protein and now you're starting to freak out, you are old school. If watching someone sit on a hammer machine for 5 minutes between sets playing with their phone pisses you off, you are definitely old school. OSBBC.com for the hardest training athletes.
I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body, and that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching a tasty pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions, diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, news, Arnold Classic this weekend. We're going to be there covering it wall to wall. Obviously, it's a bit of a different format this year. Friday is going to be, well, there is going to be no Meet the Pros event, which we usually have on a Thursday. With the show being a 2-day event, it's only going to be a 1-day event this year. Open class, classic physique, bikini, and fitness. The Arnold Showcase, which is usually on Sunday, that's going to be on Friday night. So obviously, in light of everything that's going on with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Arnold Classic, it's going to be very interesting to see what Arnold Schwarzenegger has to say on Friday night. We're going to go right at the questions. We have a lot planned today, obviously, this being Arnold Classic week. If you haven't already done so, check out yesterday's episode of Iron Debate. We have Milos Sarcev, Chris Cormier, Dominic Cardone, and of course Dave Palumbo breaking down this upcoming Arnold Classic. Let's go to the questions. The first 2 questions, of course, from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. The first question, Dave, what's the protocol if you compete 2 days in a row, Saturday 6 p.m., Sunday 6 p.m.?
First of all, the Dave Palumbo Experience app is an app for your cell phone. You can download it from iTunes or from the Android store, depending on which phone you have, and it's $29 a month. And you basically have me as your coach. You get access to all my writings that I've done over the years, all my videos I've done in one place. You can ask unlimited questions up to me on that app, and they get posted in a public forum so that everyone can see the questions and the answers. So it's a great learning experience. Plus, I do a Q&A video every week, so it's like an extra Ask Dave, just the best questions that I received from the week. So it's a great. Plus, we put a workout up every single week as well to follow. So great, a really good resource to have at your fingertips. As far as the question goes, what was the question? 2-day show.
Yeah.
My advice to you is treat the first day as the show. So you do all your regular peaking for it. Obviously, if it's a 6 p.m. show, you're gonna have to adjust your peak schedule to peak at night as opposed to in the morning, which is usually the case. And then after the show's over, what I let my guys do, or girls, is eat whatever they want, essentially. So have a big cheat meal after the show's over. If the show's over earlier, it's 8 o'clock and they make it 2 more, you might get a second meal that's a little cleaner before bed. And then I let them drink unlimited until they go to bed. Okay, when they go to sleep at night, that's when they cut the water off. and I'll usually give them maybe a little bit of a diuretic before bed just to flush anything out. When they wake up in the morning, I see how they look. If they're too flat, obviously I'll let them drink a little bit earlier on in the day because remember, they're not going back on stage till 6 p.m. If they're maybe a little watery, a little full, then I'll keep the liquids out and just have them sip. Usually they wake up the next morning perfect. And so what I usually have to do is kind of give them little bits of 2 ounces of fluid throughout the day at every meal, depending on how they look. And then what I do is I feed them. Once again, I repeat usually I give them a pancake, eggs, breakfast. I'll give them a couple clean meals, and then I'll usually do a burger fries because we can do that because they're not competing until 6 p.m. And then I kind of peek them in. Then look, depending on how they look, of course. If they're not the kind of physique that can handle a burger and fries, then we don't do that. We stay clean all day. But the key is replenishing what you depleted the day before, and that means after the show, eating what you want, drinking a lot of fluids, even if you think you're going to bloat because you're not. Because all those diuretics that are in your system are going to keep flushing water out, and then you can take a little bit before bed. And usually, you might even look better the second day.
Second question, again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Do you think the blue blocking glasses help in any way? So I don't know if he's talking about the blue light blocking glasses.
Yeah, I think the ones that you wear supposedly when you work on a computer so that you don't get the effects of, I don't know. Supposedly, light, the light from the computer screen can mess up your circadian rhythms because, especially if you're working late into the night like I do, because supposedly like the light, messes up your daylight cycles. I don't know if it really does. I have no problem falling asleep at night, but I'm always tired because I got kids I run after and I get up nice and early in the morning. If you have a sleep problem or an issue falling asleep, you could try them. I mean, I don't necessarily know if it's messing up anyone's sleep and wake cycles, but if you happen to have a problem, then do it. We hear about these things all the time, even with COVID shots. Yeah, there are people who get vaccinated and have a problem and may die because there's always people that have a reaction to everything. And that's unfortunately the situation in life. So, yeah, I'm sure Sid's got his blue glasses he just put on. But if you have a problem with sleeping and maybe you're getting anxious and stuff like that at night because you're working on the computer late, try to wear that. My thing that I do is when I go to bed and I'm getting ready, usually I brush my teeth, I wash my face, do all the stuff I got to do to get ready, and then I'll sit on the toilet maybe, and normally I'll pull my phone out and I'll start looking at text and Instagram and all this stuff. I put the phone down and I don't look at the phone because that gets you wound up, especially if you're looking at stuff you like bodybuilding or new supplements. You get all excited and then you can't sleep because you got yourself. Listen to music or read a book, a couple pages of a book that's kind of not like a fictional book, like something like that's maybe a new age type of stuff. Relax your brain so that it's not thinking about everything that you have to do tomorrow. And that's the best way to fall asleep. We lost Sid. We can't hear him. I guess I got to do my own Ask Dave. All right, next question. Too bad I don't have the questions. Cookie Monster wants to know, are there any healthy cookies to eat in this bodybuilding industry? And the truth be told, Cookie Monster, even though your batteries are not working, we got to change your batteries, is that my favorite cookie, believe it or not, is those Quest cookies. I eat the chocolate chip ones all the time, and I even eat the peanut butter ones. And the great thing is they have them in 7-Eleven. So I don't like to have a whole box of them sitting around, but I eat those. But I love the tasty pastries from Legendary Foods, and they send these to me for free. So these are awesome. You can put them in the toaster oven, you can put them in the microwave, and they have almost zero. They're pretty much almost net carb zero. There's practically no net carbs, and they're 20 grams of protein. So we devour these over here at the studio. Okay. We have Sid back?
Yes, we do.
Oh,
and
there we
I
go.
truly not look like I can fix somebody's computer, which I always get mistaken.
You put the blue light. You put the blue glasses on. So
yes, exactly. So I'm saying, now I look like the IT guy that I was probably born to be. Let's go to our Instagram question. If you're not already following us, our handle is official_RxMuscle. Of course, we're going to be in Columbus this week, and in 2 weeks, we're going to be in Orlando for the Olympia. So anyone that we see, everything that we're going to be doing, we're going to be documenting it on our Instagram stories, our feed. We load it up throughout the course of the weekend. So if you're not already following us, official_RxMuscle. And then, of course, if you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit like, hit the notification bell so you're not going to miss anything this Arnold Classic weekend. And then, of course, in 2 weeks at the Olympia weekend. Let's go to Dedgewick. Good question here, and I know you had discussed. I mean, we kind of touched on this topic in a couple of different ways regarding Jake Wood's comments. In light of conditioning, I guess over conditioning, the use of diuretics. Do you think Jake Wood's opinion about the changes in judging are going to be introduced? And I'll take it a step further. Could we see any bit of a reflection of that maybe this upcoming Olympia, or do you not see it having any impact or any bearing of the judging?
Zero impact. First of all, you saw the Rising Phoenix show. The most conditioned girls won. I think Jake was very upset by the fact that someone died backstage, or that people are dying because of diuretic abuse. And I think that was a very emotional, and I haven't spoken to Jake, so I don't know. But I think it was an emotional response on him because he's a very heartfelt guy. He cares about the sport. He cares about the competitors. But I think it really what it was maybe a combination of bad luck with a dangerous protocol that someone was following. And I think if people just educate, and I keep saying this, you got to educate yourself. You cannot follow just what people say blindly, okay? I have a girl who didn't want to take any herbal diuretics that I helped last week, and I said, fine, you draw the line. I will work within your boundaries. But, obviously there are safe ways to do things, and there are not safe ways to do things. And I think a lot of people do things that are very risky for no reason, okay? To dry out for a show and get, lose that excess extracellular water. It doesn't take a lot, okay? If you do it right. It takes one day of a little bit of fluid restriction, maybe some sodium restriction, and a mild diuretic. If you're not dry after that, then you're fat, okay? Or you did something you shouldn't be doing. And that's the bottom line. And so I think that we're going to see the same level of conditioning standard in the judging for both the Arnold and the Olympia. And I just think that, hopefully the messages that we, the press, are putting out there, we, the educators, to educate yourself more before you start doing dangerous protocols, I hope that will solve the problem, because drug testing never does. And they're not going to start picking people who are out of shape and smooth to try to, bring in a safer sport. That's just not going to do. People will still do risky stuff.
Let's go to, speaking of diuretics, Sugar J Fitness wants to know, in your opinion, the best natural herbal diuretic.
You could go out and buy pure Uva Ursi. They have it. You can go on Amazon and find plenty of companies that sell it. Uva Ursi is in my experience, the strongest herbal diuretic that you can find. People use dandelion and B6 and all the. It doesn't work anything close to Uva Ursi. When I had a product called Aqualize out for a while. I'm sorry I stopped producing it, but the problem is we didn't sell enough of it, because how many people compete naturally in shows and use herbal diuretics? But it was very popular among people who don't use diuretics, and because it worked, because Uva Ursi is phenomenal in terms of water loss. It's so potent. In fact, if you take too much of it, you feel like you have a hangover. So I usually have people who are doing the natural route usually take 800 milligrams of that with every meal the day before the show, and that dries them out really well. Now, the thing with herbal diuretics is it's not that quantifiable. So depending on what brand you get, or whose version you're using, you can get variable results. That's why I prefer Diazide, because Diazide, if you give 12.5 milligrams of the stuff, you're going to get a certain result from it, and it's very predictable. Whereas the herbals, sometimes they work, sometimes they're not so good, sometimes they work too good. And that's, once again, because people don't standardize what they're putting in their products, and that's always been the case with everything. It's like trying to control your blood sugar using vanadyl sulfate. Does vanadyl sulfate lower blood sugar? It does, but how much does each pill lower blood sugar? I don't know. But it's a lot easier to take a shot of insulin to lower your, all right, if I take 20 grams of carbs in, I take 2 units of Humalog, my blood sugar is normal. So, once again, drugs are more specific.
Let's go to Christian Lawu. What does it mean when you're bleeding after a shot? Basically, do you lose out on anything?
It depends. Most of the time when you put a needle into, a bigger gauge needle, 22, 23 gauge, into a muscle, okay? When you're going into the muscle, there's capillary beds. All the blood vessels, the arteries and veins, end in these capillaries that are microscopically thin vessels, which is where oxygen gets exchanged inside the muscle. When you kind of poke into the muscle, sometimes you nick some of the very small arterioles or maybe some capillary beds, and you get a little bit of bleeding in there. But what happens is then you push this 2 or 3 cc's of fluid into the muscle. It creates back pressure, and what happens is when you pull the needle out, that back pressure shoots what the most common denominator, the lightest thing that's in there, which is the blood, out of the wounds. Sometimes you can actually see it spray across the room because it's a very fine, the needle leaves a very, very fine hole. So what's happening is you're getting just the back pressure of it. So most of what's coming out is just blood. Sometimes you might see a drip or two of oil at the top, very infrequently, especially if you're going deep into the muscle with it, which is the way you should do it. So there is a little trick if that happens to you a lot. Before you actually stick the needle in, if you kind of pull the skin down or push it up, okay, and then inject, when you pull the needle out and the skin drops back in place, it kind of seals that hole off, so you don't get the back pressure of the blood coming out. Now that'll only happen if you happen to nick something. If you don't nick something, you might never get that. But sometimes you get a little oil dripping out. You're probably not losing. You may be losing 1% of what's in there, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. But if you want to stop that from happening, just move the skin a little bit.
Go to Ivan, bodybuilding. How do you approach peaking bikini competitors for their show? Is there a difference with bodybuilders? I'm guessing that they don't have to be carb loaded, etc.
No, I actually find that bikini competitors do need to be a little carb loaded, especially if they're in shape. My strategy, and this is the strategy that most people should use, is get them in the best shape of their life. Okay, maybe even too good a shape. Okay, and then feed them up. So meaning, if you're nice and tight and you have ripped abs, your glutes have no fat on them, essentially, just maybe a little coating of it. And then you feed them carbs, and you just pull a tiny bit of water. Everything looks nice and taut and round and perfect. Obviously, you're not going to overly super dehydrate and diuretic them because you don't need you don't want to see striations in their glutes and legs, okay? But if you try to do that, carb load a girl who's really not in shape, who maybe she's got abs, but her ass and her legs are a little, they got some body fat on it because you don't want to get them, quote, too hard, that you're waiting, they're going to look terrible on stage. You cannot carb them up at all. Now you risk their abs being too hard, but the bottom being too soft. So you got to strip all the fat off of it, even though they may go through a period of the diet, maybe 2 or 3 weeks out from the show, where they actually look too lean, okay? And people say, oh, I'm too lean. They don't want me this lean. Don't worry about it. Let's get the fat off you, then we can feed you up. And I love to do that. If I can get a girl in shape 2 weeks out from a show, and then I can start feeding her, giving her burgers and fries every couple days, or maybe giving her a cheat meal here and there, or carbing her up one day, maybe giving her 200 grams of carbs one day of clean carbs just to fill her out. That's the best of both worlds, because once you get a person lean, they're not getting fat again, but you can keep filling them up, loading them and depleting them, and loading them and depleting them. And the advantage of doing that is that you can actually see how they look best. Maybe they look good on clean carbs, maybe they look good on a cheat meal, and then you can employ that when you're actually getting them ready for those last 3 days for the actual competition.
Let's go to bodybuilding and wrestling. Leg press, hack squats, and deadlifts. Would you add deadlifts with the hex bar, or would you do more sets of the first 3 exercises?
For what? What do they want to accomplish? Leg development?
Yeah, I suppose.
For leg development, nothing beats the squat. We know that. I like to do squats and then one other mass, complex movement. So let's say I do squats and leg press in one workout. The next workout I may do squats and squats and hack squats. The next workout I might do the horizontal leg press, and squats. I might do Smith machine and hack squats. I try to mix it around, and then of course I do extensions and then hamstrings. But I try not to do more than 2 main movements, but I put 100% into those movements. Deadlifts are tricky because I like to do them on back day because obviously it does thicken your back and your traps, obviously pulling off the floor. But there is a leg component, absolutely. When you're driving off the floor, you're using glutes and adductors and quad to drive off the floor. So there is a quad component. What I found is by separating the deadlift from the leg day, okay, on different days, you're actually getting almost a second leg day in there. And what I noticed was when I did deadlifts and my deadlift improved, my squat improved a lot. Because when you can deadlift a lot of weight off the floor using good form, it helps the bottom position of the squat. And a lot of people get stuck at the bottom and they can't drive out of the hole. But the deadlift, that's all you're working is that drive out of the hole. So they really complement each other really well.
Let's go to Chris Reed Physique. Does being on HRT have any effect on sperm production?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you could be on 50 milligrams of testosterone. It could shut down your natural production. Sometimes smaller doses like HRT doses just actually shut you down more so than being on a high dose testosterone. Because remember, your pituitary is going to be shut down no matter what you take, okay? But are the testicles shut down? That's the key. The more you take, let's say you inject 2,000 milligrams of testosterone a week, which I don't advise, but if you do, the concentration of that testosterone that's passing through the testicles, the blood supply of the testicles, bathing those testicles in testosterone is going to be higher. So at some point, because you have such a high amount of testosterone passing through there, they start to stimulate the testicles to start producing sperm again, okay? Whereas if you were naturally producing testosterone only, that testosterone is occurring in the testicle right next to the sperm production cells, which is going to keep the sperm production going, okay? So that's why being off a cycle is more, it makes you more fertile than being on a cycle. Once you shut down production and you only have the exogenous form of testosterone, even though it's more than you normally have in your bloodstream, it's spread out and it's not concentrated down there. So for some people, they can be on a big full-blown cycle and get a woman pregnant. For other people, they take a cycle and they're completely, non-fertile. For some people, just taking 100 milligrams of testosterone, HRT, makes them infertile. Matter of fact, for most people, that is. But the FDA tried to release injectable testosterone as a birth control, and they found that it just wasn't consistently preventing guys from being fertile. So in some people it works, in some people it doesn't. I know innumerable. Ask Ronnie Coleman. He's gotten his, women pregnant many times while on cycles. Some people are just fertile all the time. I don't know why. That's just the way it is.
Take one more question. We have another special episode of Iron Debate Plan. We also have Jay Campbell coming up, so a lot to do. For those asking about after hours, we have it scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, evening, but it is going up tomorrow. We did do an episode of After Hours today.
One of the best.
Hilarious. You're going to be introduced to essentially the next Greg Valentino, a man in 26-inch arms. Hilarious episode. I promise it'll be worth the wait, but when you have Arnold Classic Week, Olympia Week, things are going to be shuffled around a little bit, but it is scheduled, is going to go up tomorrow. But again, today we have a lot planned for you. Last question from Juan Presenter. It's been a month since I had COVID. I'm still dealing with joint pain and fatigue daily. Any recommendations for post-viral fatigue, or in your experience from what you've seen from other bodybuilders, right, getting past COVID as a bodybuilder?
Rest seems to work really well. I think a lot of guys want to get right back in the gym, and you know what? You have to almost go back to the gym as if you had had a huge 6-month layoff, even though you might have only had a 2 or 3 week layoff, and kind of coddle yourself a little bit until your body feels normal and you can start eating right and you're recovering right. Omega's really important, guys. Anything that's going to reduce inflammatory responses in the body. Like if you look at my Omega-Lyse formula, between the essential fish oil in there, the evening primrose oil, and of course the palmitoleic acid, which is omega-7 fat, which is a great reducer of C-reactive or total body inflammation. That's going to really help not only the joints but the entire body. Especially around the lungs, where you get all that congestion and a lot of inflammation as well from COVID. You want to reduce the inflammatory response. Curcumin is another great supplement to take that really reduces total body inflammation. Even Boswellia is pretty good too if you're really excessively feeling not good. But rest seems to work the best in my estimation. And look, I have a lot of clients. I had to tell them they wanted to get right back on contest prep and do the contest, and I said, you know what? It ain't gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Your body's not responding. You don't want to get on by forcing yourself to do contest dieting and all that cardio, you're just going to run yourself down ragged and you're going to get worse. And in a lot of situations where people said, I want to do it anyway, they just never made it. They tried and they said, you were right. You know what? So don't force your body if you can't do it. There's always next year. You want to be your best on stage, and you certainly want to get over. If you do get COVID, you want to get over it with the best health, predictions for the future. You don't want to have like clots and all kinds of other crazy stuff happen to you down the road after the infection is over. Because that's when the bad stuff happens. Guy Cisternino had a blood clot in his leg a month after he had COVID. He thought he was fine. COVID was not a big deal, and then he got a blood clot. So you got to be very careful with that.
That is going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder right now on the channel, all new episode of Iron Debate, a pre-Arnold Classic episode of Iron Debate, and of course, Monday's episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. A lot this week in terms of breaking down the upcoming Arnold Classic. And then, of course, in just a couple of days, we'll be in Columbus, Ohio, bringing you wall-to-wall coverage of the 2021 Arnold Classic. For Tyler Shore and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you from Columbus in a couple of days.